There's a moment early in every conflict where survival skills outrank firepower, and during the Second World War, this truth became painfully clear. Patrols needed to move without detection, outposts needed to stay hidden, and field units often had to cook meals in terrain where smoke meant exposure, and exposure meant death. What emerged from this pressure wasn't a new stove or a new fuel. It was a method, simple, ingenious, and almost forgotten, that allowed soldiers to cook hot meals without producing a trace of visible smoke. This was a system that kept entire units alive behind enemy lines. And even today, it remains one of the most reliable ways to cook discreetly in the wild. If you've ever wanted a fieldcraft technique that blends historical relevance with modern survival practicality, this is one worth reclaiming. The method gained its reputation because it controlled the two sources of smoke before they even formed. The key problem in wartime cooking wasn't the fire itself. It was combustion inefficiency. Smoke is simply unburned fuel escaping before it can be fully consumed. World War II units learned quickly that the solution wasn't to hide smoke, it was to eliminate the conditions that created it. That required controlling airflow, fuel moisture, and burn temperature in a way that earlier armies had rarely attempted. The heart of the smoke-free system was what soldiers later called the controlled draft pit. It wasn't a Dakota fire hole in the modern sense, although it shared similarities. This setup involved digging a cooking chamber deep enough to concentrate heat, and then feeding it with a secondary airway that preheated incoming oxygen. By preheating the air before it reached the flame, combustion became clean and complete. The result was nearly invisible output, no visible smoke plume, no smell detectable at distance, and a hotter burn that reduced fuel consumption. Automated combustion wasn't the goal, concealment was, but the system offered both. What made this system superior was the way it managed temperature with remarkable stability. During World War II, many small cooking fires failed because field cooks tried to burn whatever they found. Wet twigs, green branches and debris would just smoulder, creating thick smoke. The controlled draft method solved that using two principles: fuel preparation and oxygen staging. Fuel preparation, well, it meant breaking wood into small uniform pieces and letting them dry for even a few minutes near body heat or inside a coat before use. This wasn't done out of convenience, but necessity. Wood that burned hot and fast produced less soot and fewer unburned particulates. Oxygen staging meant air entered the fire from below, passed upward through a narrow combustion column, then met hot gases and fully ignited them before they could escape. When done correctly, this created a flame that burned blue or nearly invisible, the hallmark of complete combustion. Expedition reports from scouts and resistance fighters praised the method because it allowed them to cook in occupied territory without giving up their positions. These days, modern survivalists can, well, replicate the entire system in just a few minutes using simple tools. Everything you need for smoke-free World War II cooking is honestly available in almost any environment you might find yourself in. A small shovel or, even a sturdy stick is enough to dig the pit, and the hole can be made in forest soil, sand, clay, or even snow with a bit of modification. To apply the technique today, you'd start by digging a vertical pit about the depth of your forearm, with a diameter large enough to fit a small pot or cooking surface. Then a second hole is dug at an angle to intersect the first near the bottom. This becomes your airflow intake. The angle should allow you to feed small sticks down the tunnel if needed and let air enter freely. The key, really, is to make sure that incoming air meets the flame at the base, rushing upward through the ignition column. Once the structure is dug, you'll want to prepare your fuel. Break dry sticks to a uniform size, ideally about finger thick. If the environment is damp, it's best to gather dead branches off the ground rather than those lying on it. Even damp wood can be used, actually, if you strip the outer layer with a knife or snap it to expose the dry centre. Feed the fire with a small starter flame. Cotton, dry grass or a wax tinder will do, and let the draft pull air naturally. As the column heats, the fire intensifies without expanding outward or, releasing smoke. With a pot placed directly over the opening or suspended above it, cooking becomes quick and discreet. Soups, boiled grains, teas and stews heat faster because the chimney effect concentrates the flame. The system really excels in harsh weather because it protects the flame while, improving efficiency. One of the reasons World War II soldiers adopted this method was its performance in winter. Open fires sputtered in sleet and wind, but a recessed fire chamber protected the flame and fed it stable oxygen. Units in the Ardennes, in the mountains of northern Italy, and in Soviet forests relied on it because snow acted as insulation rather than a hindrance. Soldiers reported that even during whiteout conditions, the pit maintained a steady burn. Another advantage was that the pit produced minimal glow at night. The recessed flame sat below ground level, reducing visibility to anyone scanning from distance. In blackout conditions, even a flicker of orange could compromise a position. Veterans later wrote that the smoke-free pit fire was often the only reason they could eat warm meals at all during sensitive nighttime operations. This forgotten World War II method remains one of the most useful techniques for discreet outdoor cooking. Whether you're camping in a public area where you want to avoid drawing attention, cooking during a power outage, or learning historical survival methods, the smoke-free pit stands out for reliability. It requires no metal stove, no special materials, and no advanced bushcraft, just an understanding of airflow and combustion that World War II soldiers refined under real-world pressure. It's one of those pieces of wartime ingenuity that honestly deserves to be kept alive, not just for historical value, but for practical usefulness today. If you want more deeply researched fieldcraft, forgotten wartime tricks, and old-world survival systems brought back to life, make sure you subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this guide with other history enthusiasts and outdoor builders.